Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us for the 22nd edition of the World Sustainable Development Summit 2023. Before we commence this session today, a brief safety announcement during the event here at Stein Auditorium, India Habitat Center. TERI is a health, safety, and environment certified organization. In case of any untoward incident like fire, evacuation is required. You are required to exit from this auditorium through the fire exit gates nearest to you without any panic. There are 7 exit gates for this auditorium, 4 on the ground floor, right, left, and at the 2 main entrances. There is 1 exit on the stage and 2 exits in the balcony, which are also the entrances to the balcony. In case of fire, fire marshals will take position in the aisles and exit gates will help you evacuate. As we proceed further, it is my great privilege to host you all on behalf of the entire WSDS and TERI family. My name is Trinayana Kaushik, and we have with us some very distinguished guests who will be sharing their thoughts during this session, which is second-guessing Dr. Pachauri, what would be his priorities for India and the world today. We have with us His Excellency Dr. Ashni K. Singh, Honorable Minister of Finance, Guyana, Mr. Janos Pastor, Executive Director, Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative, Mr. Rakesh Kakkar, Vice Chairman of the TERI Alumni Association, Dr. Viva Dhawan, Director General, TERI, Mr. Nitin Desai, Chairman, TERI, Dr. Saroj Pachauri, Distinguished Scholar, Population Council. The session will be moderated by Dr. Priyanka Kochar, President of the TERI Alumni Association. Ma'am, I request you to take the proceedings forward from here on. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dr. Pachauri, as we all know, was an exceptional individual, an exceptional leader, an extraordinary visionary, and an incorrigible optimist, a rare institution builder, a caring mentor, a supportive colleague, and a good friend. We are gathered here today in his memory to reflect on what his priorities would be for India and the world today. On behalf of TERI and the TERI Alumni Association, I welcome all our distinguished speakers and all the guests who are present in the audience. Since his passing in 2020, the TERI Alumni Association has brought out 2 books on Dr. Pachauri, highlighting the visionary institution builder and the crusader against climate change that he was. Without taking any further time, I would now request His Excellency Dr. Ashni Singh, the Honorable Minister of Finance for Guyana, to kindly share his reflections.
Thank you very much. And let me thank the entire leadership of TERI for inviting us from Guyana to be a part of this excellent event. As you know, our Vice President was here and participated actively in a number of discussions yesterday. I am myself particularly privileged to be able to participate in this panel discussion that reflects on the outstanding legacy of Dr. Pachauri. And I say this because Dr. Pachauri occupies a very special place in the heart of us in Guyana. We've had the privilege of knowing him and of having an association with him since, in fact, the 1990s, when, in the first instance, our then president, Dr. Cherry Jagan, met Dr. Pachauri on his then visit to India. And ever since that time, Dr. Pachauri took an interest in Guyana's unique circumstances, particularly in relation to sustainable development and our unique forest resources and how those forest resources could be deployed in the interest of sustainable development globally. And so his association with Guyana dates back to that time. And he would subsequently visit Guyana. I had the privilege myself of meeting him on a number of occasions on his visits in Guyana. and interacting closely with him, which allowed me an opportunity allowed me the privilege not only to see Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, the outstanding scholar and global titan in the world of the science of climate change, but also allowed me the privilege of seeing the human being. And I'm going to offer a few small reflections in this regard as well. And so Dr. Pachauri occupies a really special place in our hearts in Guyana. He was instrumental in forging a special partnership between TERI and Guyana, with the result, in fact, that TERI now has a permanent presence in Guyana, has staff in Guyana. Dr. Rao, who is in the audience, is based in Guyana and does excellent work in Guyana and is an outstanding ambassador of the Institute. And so TERI has had a permanent presence in Guyana for over a decade as a legacy of Dr. Pachauri's interest and commitment to supporting Guyana. I would say that, from our perspective, we remember Dr. Pachauri as a person, first and foremost, as a scientist committed to scientific rigor in what he did, and all that he did. His outstanding work on the Fifth Assessment Report that led, of course, to the outcomes of Paris and to subsequently become so important for so many countries, including ours. That work is, of course, very well known. And so in the first instance, I would say that in Guyana, we think of Dr. Pachauri as a scientist of the highest standard of rigor. But secondly, I would want to say, too, that we recognized in him a commitment beyond just the science. We recognized in him, too, a strong commitment to human development, the development of the human condition. And in all that he did, understanding, appreciating, and ultimately contributing to improving the human condition was at the center of all that he did. And so his work on energy and on climate change wasn't only about scientific orthodoxy or wouldn't be viewed only from the lens, purely from the scientific lens. But in fact, we were always of the conviction that he approached everything that he did from the perspective of improving the lives of people around around the world, sorry. And thirdly, his strong commitment to the oneness of the world in which we live, a strong, committed internationalist, recognizing how intertwined we are around the world and how affected each of us is by the actions of the other. And so that characterized the work that Dr. Pachauri did as well across the globe, and certainly was brought to bear in the engagement that he had with us. And so now, a lot of the work that we have done that you would have heard of yesterday from our Vice President, including in relation to our low carbon development strategy, including in relation to the deployment of our forest resources for the purposes of advancing sustainable development and delivering lasting solutions to climate change. A lot of that work benefited tremendously and directly from Dr. Pachauri. I would also want to add that having hosted him in Guyana, we saw, it's easy to view him only as a a giant amongst, men of science. But it was beautiful to, for us, a person of his global scientific stature, it was beautiful also to see the human being in him. And if I will share one little anecdote, he was a huge cricket fan. And of course, Guyana is a cricketing country. And so beyond wanting to see the forests of Guyana and wanting to see, we visited, for example, the Kaichor Falls, the steepest, the deepest single drop waterfall in the world. Beyond wanting to see those things that were directly relevant to his work, he had a great interest in cricket and the cricketing legacy of Guyana. And I recall that on his visit to Guyana, he said, his first visit that I met him in Guyana, he wanted to visit the Border cricket ground, which had been the home of so many old classic test matches. And so we went to Border, and he saw the ground, he saw the boards, the honors boards with the names of the cricketers who had scored centuries. He met some of the prominent Guyanese cricketers like Ramnaresh Sarwan, who was still is very active. And as I was preparing for this event, I was looking through my archives from that visit, and I saw pictures of myself and Dr. Pachauri and Ramnaresh Sarwan and West Indian cricketers, Guyanese cricketers of that global presence. And he was so excited and so engaged and so well informed as well about cricket and cricket in Guyana and cricket globally, which we found very charming and endearing as well, because here was Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, global authority on climate change, engaging in a very lighthearted and personable manner on a matter outside his subject matter expertise, and obviously a subject that he had great passion on. And so I would, there's much more that I could say. I will, in the interest of time, stop, but simply to say that I don't think we need really to try very hard to second guess what Dr. Pachauri's position would be today. I think he would remain firmly committed to finding lasting solutions to the climate challenges that we face around the world. I think he would remain firmly committed to advancing the development and improvement of the human condition around the world. I think he would remain, and he would expect us all to remain firmly committed to a rigorous science-based approach, but one that is, firmly wedded to improving people's lives around the world in a lasting and sustainable manner. I will stop there. I would be happy, if time permitted, to come back again.
Fantastic. Perhaps we would request you to share those photographs, and we could put them up on a website.
I would be happy to.
That has been put together in his memory.
We will certainly do that.
Yes, yes. And I couldn't agree more with everything that you've said. Did you want to say something, ma'am?
Sure. Lots have been said, but what I would like to say is that he used to think ahead of time. And therefore, I'm just remembering, and especially after the last session when Purvi mentioned about the impact of climate change on agriculture, I used to have discussions with him, and being an agriculture scientist, I used to tell him, climate change is a threat, but food security, insecurity is real even today. So let's concentrate more on food security, and his answer would be, you don't know, climate change will impact each one of us in every possible way. And that is what we have experienced in last few years. So whether it was pandemic, which showed us that we only have one planet to live, and the impact of climate change, which is taking so many lives everywhere. So it is that he also, like I had the fortune of, I should say, spending my entire professional career in TERI, and mentored by him more or less directly. And it's something like that you have to see the problem in totality. Don't look at it from one angle. You have to see right from the policy angle, research angle, whether it can be multiplied. Your research can never remain confined to the four walls of the lab. So how do you will take it to the next level and take research for whom it is meant? And that's what TERI structure is. So TERI as an organization, we never looked for profits. We only looked at how it's going to help the society, which I should say in today's world is extremely important. And we are today talking of sustainability or rather circular economy and so on, which perhaps is also, which I'll say is in the blood of every Indian, but more so in every TERIite. One of his habits, like when we talk of sustainability, whenever he'll step out of the room, he'll switch off the light. Whenever he'll see you near the lift and he'll say, why can't you walk? Take the stairs. And it used to be really tough because he'll walk up or down so fast and it was impossible for us to keep pace with him. And then he'll laugh at us, he'll say, "Saas chad gaya tumko. Itne se mein, I'm much elder than you and what is happening to you?" So those are the sweet memories which we cherish all the time. The other thing which I learned from him was that you have to take risk. Never say no. And you will find a solution to whatever new endeavor you get into. And that is, I'll say that is something which led to what TERI's character is. And it was that you're working in one particular area, but then your study remains incomplete. So you have to get into the other area of research as well. Like climate change cannot be that you're only looking at increase in temperature. You basically have to look into what's going to happen to the crops, what will happen to the sea level. So, and therefore what kind of forecasting you do, what kind of modeling is required. So you entered practically into every field of research. So, which again is never shy away, look at the problem in totality. Now, all that is becoming extremely important today because we are at a crossroad. What I personally feel, if Dr. Pachauri was there, what he sensitized the entire world about climate change, its threats and need for sustainability, and the entire world is talking about it. But if he was there, perhaps we would have been more action-oriented as well. Because he would have said, you have talked enough, where is the action? Start in a small way, deliver, then the world will believe you that it can be done. So we are missing him, and in a way, I'll say, at TERI, definitely, we are trying to do what Dr. Pachauri's dream would have been.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's delightful to see that both POP and WSDF are outreach partners, which works both at the policy level and at the student engagement level. And I think everybody is carrying on the work that Sir set out for all of us. I would now request Mr. Janos Pastor, the Executive Director of Carnegie Climate Governance Initiative, to kindly share his views and thoughts.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me for this session, which I very gladly accepted when it was offered. It's a pleasure for me to be involved in this. And maybe let's just walk back to 1986, when I was just starting to run UNEP's energy program in Nairobi. And I remember I was talking to a person from actually Mali, but he was running an NGO in Senegal, and he said, Janos, you're working on energy, you just have to talk to Dr. Pachauri, because he's the one who knows everything. And Dr. Pachauri of what was then called the Tata Energy Research Institute, a different name but the same acronym, and so I did. And pretty soon Dr. Pachauri became Pachi, and it was the beginning of a very long set of interactions and collaborations on a range of issues over the years. And I must say, it's been quite something. We worked with him quite a lot in UNEP when I was running that energy program, and then later in the Rio conference in '92, and also 20 years later for the follow-up conference to that. But I think the most interesting part in many ways was the interactions we had with him when he was running the IPCC. And of course he did that for a long time, for two sessions, so 13 years I think in total. And I had the opportunity to work with him both as a staff at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, And then a few years later, when I was Assistant Secretary General for Climate, working with the UN Secretary General in New York, and I was able to interact with him from both sides. And it was very interesting. And I think I'd like to mention two particular aspects of these interactions that are perhaps relevant here. The first goes back to his first term at IPCC, and I was at that time with the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and I remember sitting down with him in a small office in Geneva when one of the IPCC meetings was taking place, and he was very concerned about how to communicate the outcomes of science, of the IPCC as such, but also in general of climate science to the public, to the policymakers. And I remember we were trying to work out some ways to improve that. And I think that came back many times in our interactions over the years. He was very, very concerned about how best to communicate these issues. The second one was much more difficult. That was in the second part when I was working in New York with the Secretary General, and that was the time when the IPCC had these really, really difficult challenges. In fact, the whole IPCC process was challenged by some. The integrity of the IPCC was challenged by some. And Pachi was in charge at that time, and it was difficult. It was a very difficult process. I remember him coming to New York and having interactions also with the UN Secretary General, but he pulled it through. And it just shows that he was very concerned, he was very engaged, and in the end, it worked. And today we have an IPCC that is working and is kicking and is just producing a new report, and that's by all means is related to his hard work back at that time. So these were just some personal thoughts, but then I did also try to think when I was coming over here to try to see how I would put myself into his shoes. And I noticed what you said, that maybe he would, we know what he would do. But let me just try. And I thought of three issues, but then literally before this session started, and then a little bit confirmed by what Dr. Dhawan said, I'm going to say four things. So the first one is really about energy, and Pachi was really fundamentally an energy guy. That's where it started from, and that's where he worked a lot. And personally, I started my professional work related to energy access back then in the, God knows, 70s or 80s or something like that. And I think he would be absolutely ashamed and upset and frustrated that today we still have that same problem of energy access. And so tackling that again and trying to tackle it in a way that we once and for all actually solve those issues, I would think that he would be very interested in working on that. And that would be relevant in India, that would be relevant in many parts of the global south. The second issue that I thought he would be probably interested in is knowing his pursuit of always trying to do different, better, looking ahead, is that he would say, oh, fantastic work on renewable energy, photovoltaics, look at all the stuff we've done in India and elsewhere in the world. And he would say, yeah, but that's the easy part. Now let's go for the hard part. Let's go for the stuff that is beyond the what is called the low-hanging fruit. How are we going to make cement? How are we going to fly in a zero-carbon world? And those are the things that he would probably want to address either within India, but also globally so. And then the third item that I thought of coming here was the bit about science communication, because I think he was very, very concerned about that before he took the IPCC job and afterwards. And then if he were here today and looking back to the last few years, he would have seen all the terrible things that took place in terms of science communication in relation to the pandemic. And we know how challenging that was, and how the communication on the basic science could have been done a little bit better, to say the least. And I think he would think about that kind of science communication and all the work we have done collectively on communication of climate science, say, okay, let's look at this again. And there are other things, CRISPR and other new technologies, and how does one communicate this both to the public as a whole and, of course, to the decision makers. And then the last one, and this is something that I think he would think about that, because he was an energy guy, then he did a lot of work on climate, but as both of the speakers in front of me mentioned, he was interested in many other things. Not just interested in general, but really getting deep into it. And I think what he would see in today's world is that one of the challenges that we're facing is the disconnectedness of the different things that we're working on. And because they're so disconnected, we fix a problem and create two others next door. And he would start to think about how to look at this in a broader way. Even within the IPCC, which is broad, it's too narrow. And he recognized that. I remember discussing that with him way back. So the question is, how could one look at the totality of these interrelated issues, the multi-crisis or polycrisis that some people refer to these days, and how one could address that, but with a scientific, evidence-based approach. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
That's so true. And thank you so much for your remarks. I would now request Mr. Kakkar, the Vice Chairman of the TERI Alumni Association, to share his reflections.
Thank you, Priyanka, and thank you, Dr. Dhawan and TERI, for organizing this very thoughtful session and this very provocative title of the session, Second Guessing Dr. Pachauri. It's a very tough task. We always looked up to him for guidance and to think what he would tell us today. As has come out in some of the comments of the earlier speakers, Dr. Pachauri was a great communicator. He was also somebody who could use an opportunity, seize an opportunity when he saw one. So I think he would use the present post-Ukraine war crisis, which has hit the energy sector quite badly. He would make use of the changes in the energy sector in the world to drive home the point that what Dr. Vibhadavan was saying, that we've talked enough about climate change, let's roll up our sleeves now, look at what's happened to the world in the last 1 year, and let us get our act together. He was an impatient man, so he would have been very impatient with the slow progress of conversion of our energy systems into a more sustainable system, slow progress of renewables, slow progress of other actions that are required. And to my mind, that would be his priority for the world. And for India, of course, he would expect India to step up and take a leadership position, but to also be mindful that whatever be the complexities of the Indian situation, our heavy dependence on coal, that while we continue to battle to continue to play a role in the global problems, we also have to take care of our domestic problems, and we need to take care of local pollution within the country, given our heavy dependence on coal. So to my mind, this is what he would do, and he would use his enormous communication skills to drive home these points, because ultimately it is communication that generates ideas that change the world. And we have seen how climate change has now become an indispensable part of any discussion on energy or environment, which was very different from what it was just a few years back. So these are the few observations that I have on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Katkar. Could I request, sir, you to kindly share your views as well?
Yes, thank you very much. Can I be heard? Yeah. Well, Dr. Pachauri and I were more like colleagues. We were about the same age, and we knew each other for over 40 years. So forgive me if I call him Patchy. And what I would say about Patchy that I note most clearly is, one, he was a good listener. He was always willing to listen to people, and that is why TERI developed so rapidly in different areas. Because we met somebody and he said, and somebody pointed out to him that, oh, this is an important emerging issue. He was very quick to respond and set something up. Do come one day to the TERI building and you see the sheer range of centers which have been set up for different areas. We started with energy, but we went on to other resources also. He also recognized that the answers don't just lie on analytical studies, but genuine research which produces environmentally friendly technologies for use, and that's why he worked so hard to set up the laboratories in the Gwalpari complex of TERI. Vibha, in fact, is a scientist on the biotechnology side. There's a second characteristic of him, besides his willingness to be open, not just be stuck in what I'm doing, but also to listen to people who ask him to do something new. The second characteristic of him was the importance he saw in communication. Let me focus on one particular area of this. The IPCC started in 1988-89, and the first few chairs of the IPCCs were scientists who were okay. They were not great. They were not really people who organized for communication. But if you see the fifth assessment particularly, and the effort he put in putting out packages of that assessment, which would be easily understood by the media and would be communicated by the media. You see the media presentations which were prepared for they were never prepared in the earlier ones, but they were prepared for the fifth assessment report. And that changed things because it increased greatly the awareness of the issues of climate change. And that was a very important part because it is the awareness change which is leading to some action now. If it had been simply a nice scientific report, it would have been continued to be discussed by scientists in countries, and we would have left, and we would have been stuck with that. Let me just say, what would he have listened to? Let me put it this way. What would he have said if we had chatted as we often did for the past 40 years that we knew each other? I would say there were two things that I would like to see us elaborate. One is, that it's absolutely true that today the answer, not just to climate, but in many other environmental areas, including food and agriculture, lies not just in improving the supply side through environmentally friendly activities, but also addressing the demand side. That has not been done so far, but we need to do it. It's certainly very obvious in the case of energy, and I was happy that in many of the speeches we heard in the sessions here, there is now a willingness in the developed countries to address the issue of lifestyles for environment. But you know, Dr. Pachauri also used this in agriculture. You will remember that he argued that basically part of the answer to the issues is on all of us becoming agriculturists. Now that's not a constraint on the dinner that you will have now, but I just thought I'd mention this. The second issue that I would now stress is, we were looking for answers, but let us now also look for answers if the answers don't work, on resilience and adaptation. Increasingly in countries like India, we must be ready for the possibility that the climate mitigation actions will not lead to the sort of changes we really need. and that we will have to cope with larger scale of adaptation and, even more important, resilience in the face of greater uncertainty about climate conditions. And that may be true in certain other environmental areas also. So these are the two things that I would have chatted with him about, and I hope that those who now work in this institution will also listen to this and do something in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Desai. I believe Dr. Saroj Pachauri has joined us online. Are you there, ma'am?
Yes, she's here.
Excellencies, distinguished panelists, friends, colleagues, it's an honor to be here today to participate in this session. I have to say that I am so deeply touched that TERI organizes the session every single year, and I cherish it greatly. And thank you. Now, the subject of this session, this time, is fascinating, actually. Second guessing Dr. Pachauri, what would be his priorities for India and the globe and the world today? Well, to me, it seems that if you have to do this kind of second guessing, you'd have to look into a crystal ball. You gaze into the crystal ball to see what would he be doing. So when I gaze into this crystal ball, what do I see? I see a very dynamic, a very vibrant, a very valiant Pachi coming along, fighting for the battles that he fought all his life for climate change, wanting to make a change to save the world, carrying on even more vigorously than ever before. But at the same time, I see he's a bit sad because progress has been much slower than he had hoped for. I see him working with all levels, with decision makers, researchers, academicians, grassroots level organizations, NGOs, at all levels to make the change, to bring together all stakeholders. I see him, he sees this problem as a global problem, but at the same time, he wants to make sure that India takes the lead, that India is on the forefront of this problem. So he works through TERI. And TERI is an organization that he has undying faith in, an organization that he began from scratch, that today is an internationally recognized organization that does research of high quality, of high scientific rigor, which can be translated into action, into policies and programs. I see him working with very high-level professionals, with even prime ministers and presidents to garner support. I see him working with the grassroots and stakeholders at all levels. I see him working more vigorously than ever before, and he's even more enthused and more hardworking and relentlessly carrying on his battles. He is, however, very disturbed by the manifold multiplying weather-related events that are occurring in the form of earthquakes, hurricanes, forest fires, storms, and more. He is concerned about those, and so he redoubles his efforts. The one quality that Pachi had, which I greatly always admired, was that he never gave up. He was a determined individual who carried on despite all odds. And he battled on, and he battled on. So when I look at this crystal ball and I ask the question, we are second guessing Dr. Pachauri, I find that he's working more relentlessly as ever. He's trying to find solutions to problems that need to be resolved. He certainly isn't giving up. He's fighting the world. He's carrying on with his battles, and he's trying to make the world a better place, which was ultimately what we all want. And I am touched. I am very deeply touched by all the efforts that he is making. He is making progress. He is not giving up, and he is winning. And the last thing I want to say is that one of the last things that Patty did before he went was to set up an organization called the POP, Protect Our Planet Movement. And this organization came out from his firm belief that youth will be most affected by climate change, although it is no fault of theirs, and therefore youth should be involved and engaged in making the difference. And his son, Dr. Pachauri, who's my son, has taken on this program and taken it much further to higher heights. And I let him say a few words about what he thinks are the implications, or what he thinks is the meaning of this program and how far it has gone. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't take too much time, but I do want to acknowledge that Dad's vision was definitely to mobilize the 1.8 billion youth of the world to take knowledge-inspired action to protect our planet. And that's the vision with which the POP movement was born. And if we were to gaze into this crystal ball as we get to see the reality, but also the future, I think Dad's vision for the POP movement would be that we would have a world where we have young people who not only understand what the issue of climate change is, as Dr. Nitin Desai described from the scientific point of view, understood what the science of climate change really is telling us, but also how that science translates into guidance, knowledge to inspire action on the ground. And I think that that's what Dad has envisioned for the POP movement, and that's what the POP movement is focused on as a global movement, which brings together the youth of the world, collectivizes them, creates the groundswell where young people have a place at the table, where important decisions are made, but also are leading by example by, sort of propelling the action on the ground and bringing people and carrying people with them in the process. And this is a world where we're looking at communities that often get neglected, the most vulnerable, who have had the least to do with contributing to the issue, but are definitely part of the solution, and also where we're addressing issues of justice and equity, and therefore everybody has a part to play. And thus, with the POP movement, what Dad would have envisioned is that we carry everybody with us, and it has a part for every stakeholder to play. And definitely the countries that have contributed most significantly to the issue would also play a part in helping those that are vulnerable. But in that process, we're addressing issues of equity and justice and carrying the youth of the world with us to really lead that change, and lead, as Dad would always say, be the change you want to see in the world. And therefore, as we understand this issue, we want to be able to really be the ones to lead the change through our action. And that's where I think Dad would want the POP movement to go, but to scale, and to scale at a rapid rate, given that we have a small and shrinking window of opportunity. And that's where the POP movement was born, and that's where I think he would want to see it go. So young people also have the role and ability to influence change in the world, and that youth would be at the forefront of this movement to protect our planet. Thank you.
I'm energized, ma'am, after listening to you and after seeing you and Ashji after such a long time. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm also very grateful to Dr. Shelley Kedia to help curate this session. I think this has been, this just brought up a lot of memories, and I am grateful for this opportunity to be a part of this interaction here. Thank you so much. Unless anybody had something else to say. Did you have anything else to say? We'd like to wrap up this session, and thank you all. Good evening.
That was indeed very nostalgic for all of us, as Dr. Kocher said. We have come to the end of the session, and I want to thank all the speakers for sharing their reflections and ideas on Dr. Pachauri. Now I request all of you to join us for the cultural program and cocktail dinner organized outside the Stein Auditorium at the Hub. Thank you all once again.